Okay, I hope the poem is visible. Alright, so I think we completed the first stanza, and the second stanza needs to be discussed today, right? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. So পিঠ নিয়ে ডিসকাশন হয়ে গেছিল না?
Hmm?
পিঠ নিয়ে ওই ডিসকাশনটা হয়েছিল না, তো সেকেন্ড প্যারা থেকেই কি হবে নাকি?
Um, আসলে কেটে কেটে যাচ্ছিল তখন।
ও তাহলে শুরু করে দিন, হ্যাঁ তাহলে করে দিন। হ্যাঁ।
ওকে ওকে Alright, so the darkness tells us how vainly I have striven or striven to free them from the pit where they must dwell. So there were various implications of the pit. Somebody said it would be hell, because a similar image could be found in Strange Meeting. There you will find the image of tunnels, and all of these images, tunnels, pit, hole, all of these images point to the trench warfare. First World War was known, for the war historians, for the war theorists. First World War is particularly known for its trench warfare, or First World War was known as trench warfare, because the conflicting armies had built trenches all across the borders, or all across the places that they had initially gained, and then they sat down within the trenches to consolidate their position, lay ambush for any reinforcements that the other um, party was sending. So trench, the image of the um pit, the image refers to the trench, the trench where the soldiers used to dig themselves in and fight. It was a very dismal place. It was a very uh, disappointing place, because there you could find no sunlight. I mean, if there were any sunlight anyway, because in the European winters were really very harsh. Due to rain, there was clogging, water clogging inside the trenches. People could not go outside to poop or pee. So you can understand, they were doing everything in those trenches. Dead bodies were often kept for days, if not months, inside the trenches, whoever died. That led to various kinds of infectious diseases. So it was not war, particularly, I mean, not bullets or bombs, which killed young soldiers, but it was often uh, as something as common as cholera, or jaundice, or any other kinds of diseases which we do not give much importance to in our modern scientific medicines, were often responsible for the death of so many soldiers. So, in darkness, in the dead of the night, Sassoon often tried vainly, not not being successful. He had tried his very best to free the soldiers from the pit, but now they are forever dwellers of that pit. They have gone to hell, as Owen was also saying in Strange Meeting, that they have entered hell, and there they are going to stay for the rest of eternity, until the judgment day or something like that. Then we can often ask that, if they are innocent, why they are in hell? Why are they inside the pit? Because they too have done some atrocities. They too willingly or unwillingly have killed other people. Some of them even died by suicide, which according to Christian beliefs is a sin, and hence they have gone into hell. This hell is also a psychological hell. We all know about PTSD, or is it PSTD? Post traumatic, no, it's PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. If you were in a situation, if you are in a situation which gives you a lot of stress, uh, it gives you a lot of trauma for a long length of time. First World War was 4 years, and I don't know if any soldier really served 4 years continuously, but even a few months, a few days, a few weeks, depending upon the intensity of the war, if you even if you go to the war theater for a few days or few months, you spend some time in the trenches, and if you make it alive, if you are lucky, even if you come back unscathed, or I mean, if you are not maimed, or if you are not shot through your lungs, or if you have not gone blind, uh, if you appear to be unbroken, if you appear to be sane, if you appear to be unwounded from a war, even then your psyche, your mind is already damaged. Trauma, war trauma does that to completely young, uh, vivacious, and energetic young people. They are turned into clods of um, veins and nerves after coming back from the war. Uh, More recent examples include people who were coming back from Vietnam to US. They were killing their own family members. They were shooting because shooting had become a kind of a muscle memory. Many people could not sleep for months and died hence because in the war they were always alert. They were always ready to um, shoot and run or duck, something like that. I mean, a classic example was shown in Heather, the movie Heather, where a person would not go inside his own house until he is thoroughly frisked. He's thoroughly searched by his own family members, because that is something that that person was routinely subjected to by the armed forces, whether of India or of Pakistan, doesn't matter. So um, you cannot free a person who has gone through trauma, especially a trauma like the First World War and the Second World War. People have remained scarred for the rest of their lives. So the pit does not just mean hell. The pit does not mean the trenches. The pit does not just mean a hole in the ground, but a pit is also the psychological pit, uh, the darkness oozing out from the psychological dents that where that occurred in the mind of the soldiers when they were participating in the war. In the outcast gloom, convulsed and jagged and riven by grappling guns, love drove me to rebel. Gloom, darkness, these are the dominant images of the poem. Gloom is outcast. This is this is the outside. I mean, even in like perfectly bright days, the smoke from burning vehicles, and the smoke from burning bodies, or from blasted shells, they would often be so much that the whole environment would seem to choke with the smoke and the dust of the moving vehicles or the movement of the troops. So these people who were in the pit, whom Sassoon could not uh, free, convulsed because they were going into some kind of a septic shock. They were going into a shock because of the loss of blood. And jagged, they were punctured by the um, rifle head. They were punctured by um, bullets, bursting shells carried shards, and grenades carried nails that made holes into the bodies of those who were near it. Uh, so their bodies were jagged and riven. These ball bearings were often used with grenades or other projectiles, and when they burst, in order to increase the impact of the firearm, impact of the projectile, they were laced with nails, um bicycles, bearing balls, which were very common back then. They burst and they spread to a very large area, and even if you are not killed by the blast of the grenade or the shell, you will be scarred for the rest of your lives by these projectiles that will be thrown at any and every direction. You won't even know which way to duck, how to get away from these kinds of bursting shells. So they were riven with all these things, and they were grappling guns. In this confusion, in this gloom, in this darkness, they were always carrying their gun. Sometimes guns fell off from their hands. They came back, they picked the guns, they started fighting again. uh, because of the mud and the rain and the melted snow, uh, they were not the soldiers were not often able to hold the guns very securely, so they always slipped from their hands. And love for these poor people who were dying as flies, love that Sassoon had for these people, drove him to rebel, drove him to write poetry against war, or drove him to write these anti-war poems, demonizing the warmongers, or demonizing the imperialist capitalist nexus of politicians and businessmen in their own countries. Love drives me back to grope with them through hell. So even if Sassoon had the opportunity to go back because he was uh, hurt, he was injured in the early part of the war. It is in the hospital that he met Owen and got influenced by him, and Owen got influenced by Sassoon. It was a mutual admiration. He came back to the theater. He came back to the war front and started to fight alongside his comrades, his brothers. So he and even if some soldiers had deserted, had run away, or thought of running away, they could not run away because they had their love for the brothers. They came back to fight, they came back to uh, die, they came back to stay with their brothers who were dying in the battlefield. And to leave your brother in arms, to leave your comrade, or to leave your superior or junior alone in the battlefield, is the worst kind of crime that a military person could ever think of. I mean, even in the social sense, a man with whom you have been fighting, a man who has been looking after you, or covering your back, is your friend, is your savior, and you cannot uh, let them rot in hell and run away. So love drove Sassoon back, and he was also groping with them. He was also crawling in the mud, uh, through the mud, with the help of or along with the other soldiers. And in their tortured eyes I stand, forgiven. So I think he is reiterating the trauma that he underwent. Um, and it seems that he is living that trauma, living that hell, not physically, but in his own mind. Even if he is suffering from survivor's guilt, he has survived the war, not his friend Owen or not other people whom he served with, and yet he survived. And because he goes through that pit, because he crawls through that infected tunnels made by humans, made by soldiers. I mean, this is ironical that uh, they dug those trenches and they died in there as if they dug their own graves and ended up being buried there. So, because Sassoon also, as a psychological setback, as a psychological uh, payback to his experiences of trauma at war, he too has gone through hell every day. Even, I mean, there is a sense of relief for those who are dead. They are not going to face the brunt of war again. But Sassoon, I think, lived through the Second World War, though I guess he never served, but he did live long enough to hear or to experience the Second World War and imagine the horror that will come upon you once you hear that, say, COVID is coming back. And the same thing happened to the soldiers who did not die in the First World War, and they had to hear, or they had to live, or to make things worse, to fight through Second World War. In their eyes, in their tortured eyes, he stands forgiven, or he thinks that he has been forgiven by his comrades uh, who have died, and he could not die with them, and he is trying to justify his position that, you see, I go through the pain as much as you do, and I should be forgiven by you, because he is suffering from survivor's guilt. And he is also banished. This banishment is also akin to a kind of a reverse Paradise Lost, where he is banished from the common hell in which his comrades were. It's like, if you are a naughty child, most of you in the meeting are, if you are banished from other naughty people, and you have been given a chance to stay good, but you will not find it very comfortable, because you are comfortable in being naughty, or you are comfortable in being punished. In a class, many of your friends have not brought their homework or have not brought books, but you by mistake have brought your book, and you are not punished by the teacher, but your friends are. And then there will be a guilt in your mind that, why are my friends punished? They are standing outside and having fun, whereas I am inside the class listening to uh, nonsense by some teacher. So the same thing happened with uh, Sassoon. He was banished from the punishment that he wanted to enjoy along with his dead comrades. Okay, so that's all with